guys, welcome back to Badasses of History. Now, I have done an episode previously, 2 episodes, about someone falling from a great height and surviving. Today's episode is about somebody soaring to a great height and surviving. Enjoy. On December 23rd, 1971, a badass was born. Her name was Ewa Wisnierska, and she was a German paragliding champion. She was, at one point, the top female paraglider in the world. Ewa, who I will now refer to as Emily, had been in love with extreme sports from an early age, and paragliding gave her an adrenaline rush that she quickly became addicted to. On Valentine's Day in 2007, Emily and around 200 others were standing on a mountain in Australia preparing for a jump. While she was gearing up, an announcement was made that a thunderstorm was forming in the distance and to advise caution. She noticed the clouds, but considered them too far out to worry about it and decided to go for it. Her team was on the ground following in a van, and her GPS tracked her every movement. After a smooth 12 miles, Emily found herself gliding over a savanna and right into a storm. 2 storms, in fact. See, the other participants had left about an hour earlier and were far beyond the storm. But for Emily, she was now caught between 2 storms that were battling each other. One of her friends immediately barreled downward, knowing the incoming danger. He landed in a farm and was immediately pelted with heavy rain and hail. Making his way to a barn, he watched in horror at the worst lightning storm he had ever seen. Emily's other friend was struck by lightning and killed instantly. It was now just her alone in the clouds. She attempted to glide through the clouds, but the storm system grew to 12 miles in a matter of minutes. The smaller storm was sucked up by the larger, and in an instant created an updraft that grabbed Emily and threw her higher into the sky. At a rate of 60 feet per second, she was literally being shot up like a rocket and completely helpless. As she approached the eye of the storm, thunder clapped around her and lightning blew past again and again. All she could do is hold her straps and quite literally ride the storm out. Within minutes of her ascent, the sky turned pitch black. All she could see was the lightning strikes around her, but nothing else. She managed to make a phone call to her crew on the ground, but only for a few seconds, and it cut out. A few seconds later, the onslaught of baseball-sized hail began pummeling her entire body. Intense cold swept over as well, adding insult to injury. Now, with getting hammered by baseballs, unable to see, and negative 50-degree temperatures, her body collapsed. Emily blacked out presumably from oxygen deprivation, but possibly from getting hit in the noggin by a frozen orange, too. The following events seem ridiculous, but keep in mind she had her GPS that tracked her movements the entire time. Emily blacked out for around an hour. At this point, she was no longer ascending, but floating. She had climbed straight past the storm and into the heavens above and was just kind of resting there. Her clothing, gloves, and entire glider were now encased in a thick layer of ice. The ice was so thick that after about an hour, one of the wings snapped from the weight, and Emily was on her way back down. Now falling at 90 feet per second, her fate seemed to be sealed. She fell for 2 miles before her glider miraculously straightened itself and stopped her descent. Again, all recorded on the GPS. The abrupt stop actually jolted her awake, and she was able to somewhat take in her surroundings. She knew she needed to get out of the storm, but she was basically a human popsicle at this point and was having a pretty hard time moving. Somehow, with oxygen deprivation, frostbite, and everything frozen, Emily managed to gain control of the glider and steady its descent. Though nearly impossible to see, she eventually crash-landed her glider on a farm and laid in the grass waiting for rescue. Multiple times, her team called her as they scoured the countryside, but every time she answered, it would cut out. Eventually, she was able to tell them her coordinates before the line cut again. Within minutes, her team rushed in, covered her in blankets, and rushed her to the hospital. On the way, Emily told her team how high up she was, but no one believed her. They more or less told her she should be quiet because she was about to keel over and die and was clearly delirious. By the time they reached the hospital and the doctors treated her minor frostbite and bruised body, they said, surprisingly, that she was good to go. Other than some external discomforts, Emily was perfectly healthy. She insisted they check her GPS, and when they did, they were still in disbelief. Emily had ascended to a height of 32,634 feet, the highest any human being has ever went unprotected and survived. That's the height commercial jets fly. That's higher than Mount Everest. And that's over 6 miles in the air. It's considered to be impossible, but somehow she did it. Her saving grace had indeed been because she passed out and therefore used less oxygen. But still, pretty insane. What's also insane is that 6 days later, Emily took her same glider to the same spot and took off the same way. Except this time, it was clear skies and there was a lot of media coverage. She still paraglides today and is also a teacher for other aspiring students and a life coach training others in personal development. All right, well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed what you heard. And if you did, then please be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, tell your friends. Thanks.